Okay, is world peace even freaking possible?
Probably not.
Okay, why do you know that? Like, what is the, if you were to say, I'm going to prove that peace not only is not possible, but it shouldn't even really be on your horizon. Because it's not possible, it's not even really healthy.
Well, a couple of things. Of course, one, we've talked about this idea that when somebody gets their way in really any matter or issue, someone else is not. So it would be very difficult, I think, to get really everybody on board with something enough to not have pushback on anything.
Okay, so first off, that's absolutely right. And what is the definition of peace?
I mean, I don't know the literal definition, but
What is your definition? When you say, when Miss Montana comes out and says, "I hope for world peace," what is she saying?
We all are happy and loving, and there's no fighting, and there's no controversy, and everybody is good, living in harmony.
Okay, Miss Montana's a freaking idiot. Number one. Sorry, Miss Montana. Okay, so if I have a wood chipper here, right? What is peace to the wood chipper? If the wood chipper wanted to tell you, I would really like some peace, what would peace be if you could say, okay, wood chipper, here's how to find peace? What would it be?
Well, you could either say the wood chipper doesn't want to have to work hard, or you could say the wood chipper is going to say, I'm a wood chipper, I want to chip wood. I need some wood to chip.
So peace would be doing the thing you were built and designed for. Would that be peace?
Sure.
Or would peace be non-movement, where it doesn't have to do anything? It could just sit there and be a hunk of metal.
Yeah.
So which one is it? And is it perspective-based, where it's the needs and desires? And that lines with what you said.
Yeah.
There's going to be some wood chippers who say, the frictions of doing what I was built to do are stressful, and so peace to me means that I stay unplugged.
Yep.
And the other wood chipper who's like, I've been sitting around here for freaking a year. I was built to chip wood.
Where's my wood?
Where's my wood? Right? So peace is an illusion, just like everything else. Everything's illusion. We're in a simulation because everything is a freaking...
Nothing's real.
Nothing is freaking real.
Everything's made up and the points don't matter.
Nobody knows what peace is. They think they do. When they say it in their head, they think it's universal, where all people are going to agree that peace is that. But I think, okay, we should think of another word that moves peace out of our vocabulary and puts in the proper word. So when Miss Montana goes on the stage, that she doesn't have half of the globe saying, you are a freaking moron for calling for either the removing purpose from people's lives, right? Because half of the people are going to be
stagnant.
like, look, she said peace is the objective, so I'm going to go home and just watch Cheers on reruns, get super fat, unhealthy, complain about how I don't feel well, but this is peace to me, so let me pursue the peace.
Yeah.
We got to find an objective deal where you can universally apply it to all people and it sticks. And if that's possible, which I don't know that it is.
Sounds pretty difficult.
Okay.
Yeah.
So should we, let's just go through some of the unpeaceful things and say whether or not they are good or bad, because I think the same stupidity is that somehow we're like, invading a country. Okay. That would be, not invading the country means that you have peace, or is it you invade the country and then you purchase peace, or the invading is invading peace? The military was built to invade, right?
Yeah.
And you're going against another military that was made to, defend. So isn't that peace?
Yeah, I mean, if you take something and you're like, hey, all right, I'm just going to use literal examples, even though we're not going to deep dive into politics, but I have been deep diving lately. NATO, for example. If NATO was created to do a certain thing, and then someone comes along and says, hey, let's not do that thing anymore. NATO's like, oh, but I was created to do the thing. Yeah, but it's not very peaceful, and we could have peace and not do the thing. So who's winning in this? The person that's like, well, now I have to end what I was. I don't really want to do that. Or push back, and now you're not at peace because you wanted to end this, but I want pushback. I don't know if you know where I was going with that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, NATO is a Needs American Taxation Organization. So their job is to just dole out lots of money to a lot of different people. And, they're wearing the military hat, but they're not. I mean, and I know a lot of you will say that they do peacekeeping missions and they do some stuff all over the world. But the pursuit is what is dumb. I mean, in theory, it works. Okay, so everybody contributes troops to it, and so that it's free from the biases of the national, the nations that make it up, and it's supposed to have votes, and the votes carry what they should be doing in their mission. And okay, fine. What if we lived in sort of like a meritocracy, and this is sort of, we could be talking about nations, but we could also be talking about health and wellness and all that kind of stuff. So what if we just took all the powerful nations, gave them the green light, the strong conquer the weak, the oppressed, countries get conquered and taken over by someone who might have better ideas, and let's just create new nations based on who's capable of defeating the weaker states, right? Mm-hmm. And so if the United States is a virtuous good and they conquer all kind of nations and take them over, then you've spread noble, virtuous good into other nations. If a bad entity does the same thing, then you create more bad entities. And it's almost like, the utility companies, where there was a lot of little utility companies and they just kept consuming each other. And then you had one really good one and one really bad one, and they could war each other. And then there would just be one war that could only happen. Yeah. I don't necessarily think that we need so many different countries or need so many different states or need so many different languages. If we're going to, make one new world order, just homogenize everything, let everything mix together. Right. And then if we're going to do a battle, at least it's a more simplistic battle where we can divide lines. You don't have to have Iran taking poor people in Gaza, strapping bombs on them and proxy warring against someone else. Right. At least if you got two sides, you can't, pick from the other, a country that's not involved and then, use them as your proxy. At least it would have more definition. Right. More clearly divided lines. And, same thing with human beings. If we would just allow weak people to die and strong people to breed, eventually you'd have a more healthy, stronger human being. And so then it ends up being whatever your end goal is. If you want perpetual little countries lobbing little, devices at each other that blows some of the people up, then you have carnage and death. Like the more longer you take it, where you either make it so that your best option isn't lobbing missiles at people, right? And make it something else, right?
How would you decide then what gets to stay? Like if you're like, oh, well,
the merit.
It's
whatever wins. Let whatever wins win.
So you do have to sort of then go through death and destruction and then see what's left.
That's the default. Like we're staving it off, but as you can see, you can't stave it off. The war, the frictions is what sort of like massages the evolution of where things become. And we're staving it off, but it's still bubbling up. So would you rather have, in most cases, this would be either have one big earthquake, right, and not have another one for 200 years, or have a smaller, half the size earthquake, but it never stops? Which would you rather have? And it's like, what's your piece? Do you like the devastating ones where lots of people die, but it happens only, every once in a while? More often, less death, but more often.
I would want whatever has the least amount of death and destruction.
What if it was equal death, right? Both of them were equal. One just happened in millions of people all at one time, and one was like 10,000 people every year. But they end up in the same amount of time, exactly the same death. Either right now, all at once, get it over with, pull the Band-Aid off, or every day someone's dying from a volcano. Or an earthquake, whatever I said.
They both sound terrible, but maybe the Band-Aid.
The Band-Aid. Pull the Band-Aid off?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't like either option.
Well, that's that's the quandary that this is, because we want to say that, you and I will one day fight, right? Because physically, emotionally, with weaponry, the whole thing, right?
Okay.
Everyone has it in them. The set of circumstances line up, and everybody's going to take aim at another person. Intelligent people basically diffuse what is naturally those frictions that actually happen and make it the least devastating version of whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But what we do is we take something that is unachievable, like peace, right? That's the goal.
Peace.
Instead of like, no, two countries, one's going to have a lot of resources and one's not. This one's going to really want to go over there and get their resources. How do we stave that off? Right? And then you take another thing and say, well, maybe peace is impossible, but we'll just take this country and we'll make them give their stuff to the other person. So we take another achievable thing and use that as a stopgap. And when that one doesn't work, who would have not seen that coming? So the first one didn't work and I would have told you so at the beginning. And the second one didn't work and I told you so at the beginning. Then everybody that's involved, all they do is figure out how to personally benefit from the chaos that we created in the pursuit of peace. So it's all bullshit, right?
It is. It is all bullshit.
It is all bullshit.
The more I deep dive into government political drama, the more I am like, this is all bullshit.
It's all bullshit. It's always been bullshit.
It's bullshit. It's corruption. It's lies. It's manipulation. It's so ridiculous.
What do you do when you find out that something that you used to believe was just like a naturally occurring thing, and then you find out that it was completely curated and you were manipulated? What do you do? What's your reaction? What's your mind do?
You start to develop distrust.
Okay, so you're at a football game and you're watching the game and they do the flyover and you're like, wow, they're celebrating the game. Right?
Uh-huh.
And then you find out that the flyover, it wasn't about patriotism or it wasn't about celebrating the game. It was a recruitment strategy that if a bunch of people saw airplanes, that they would say, hey, I want to be a pilot, and renews interest in the avionics or aviation. And now a bunch of people go to the military, so they're willing to fly over to get people's attention, to get them to sign up, and to recruit people into the military.
And all the motives behind it were to make money.
Your motives were here. We're like, oh, I love being part of this. And you're like, shit, this was just a big old ruse.
Yeah, this was something that we thought is here to make us feel good and unify, when really the motivations were to make money and to profit and to manipulate.
Yeah. And what if you were watching a movie, right? And then you were there because it's meant to take you away from reality and immerse you in some kind of fictional world, and you just get to relax into the storyline.
Yeah.
And then while you're there, I'm going to start like throwing things at you, right? In the 90s, the real big thing was stories kind of took on its deal, but they had patriotism. They wanted you to feel the national pride, right? You had movies like The Patriot. You ever watched The Patriot? One of my all-time favorites.
I think my husband was just talking about that movie. I don't think I've actually seen it, but I think he recently showed our daughter, because she's like, was I too young to watch? Is it like really violent or something?
It's a little on the violent side.
Okay,
yeah.
That's why that kept coming up in our household, but I've not seen it.
Yeah. But it invoked certain spirits. And when people would get excited when you're watching a show or a movie and get connected with a character, then there was somebody at the conference table was like, we can draw people in and we can control their minds. We can make them go to a football game and see an airplane and want to join the military. Then we can do all sorts of other stuff and F with their brains, right?
Yeah, I mean, why do movies have a soundtrack? Why is there music? It's not necessary to the plot, but it's emotion invoking, and it makes you feel a certain way.
If we were trusting artists that just wanted to bring us into a world so that we can enjoy the world that they provide, and not once we're there. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears here. So let's just say you're going under hypnosis, right?
Okay.
Person's going to control your brain, right? Why they have the control of you, right?
Uh-huh.
There's going to be a deviated thought somewhere in there that's going to say, oh, I've got a control over her brain. She can't do or say or whatever. I'm in complete control.
Yeah.
You don't think that there's a thought of while I'm in control and I have the attention of your brain that I can just throw a nugget in there. Now, most of the demonstrations that you see when it comes to that, it's all very nice, right? It's flexing the ability. But how do you know that someone's not like, when you see this, you're going to give me $100, and every time you see it, you're going to give me $100. While I'm in there, why wouldn't I put something that benefits me, right? And so when we take these psychological controls and we use media, politics, sports, movies, the whole thing, while we have you wrapped in there, we're going to throw some stuff at you that's going to change a majority of people and make them do something thinking that it was their freaking idea.
You're reminding me of another deep dive I went into. What are they called? NGOs?
NGOs.
So this concept that, and this is legal, you can hire a group of people to act a certain way. Protest something, make a scene about something, put out information or how they feel about something in a very public way because they're paid to. Not because they feel that way, because somebody paid me to do this.
Right.
Then we can cover it as a news story in order to influence anything, in order to push any agenda you wanted. And I was like, again, were we just duped and taken advantage of and manipulated in a sinister way?
And I want you to try this sometime. You're just in a group of, we'll say, 20 people, right? I want you to see if you can control the sentiment and get a reaction from the people just based on what you come, because typically when everybody's at the stadium, they're not thinking about anything but the football game. And that's why they're susceptible to that kind of airplane flyover control, because it kind of like was a novel thing. It was something outside and it was spectacular and it captivated, right? So all you really have to do when you're in that same room, let's just see if you can get an objective. Let's see if you can make everybody happy. If you can concoct something that you can do or say that makes someone happy. See if you can make somebody angry, right? See if you can change someone's mind about something that's maybe outside of their passion spectrum. I bet you could do all three, right?
Yeah.
And so if the news can do it, if the government's allowed to pay a newspaper, or an advertiser is allowed to advertise so much on something that they can sway the news coverage, then a majority of people, those same people that are in that 20 group that are completely controllable by the messages that reach their ears, right? They would be the same ones at the party that you're able to, because they don't care. It's not part of their passion.
Yeah.
You came at them with something they weren't expecting, and all of a sudden, now they have a new thing to either be happy about, pissed off about, or completely changed on. It's total, and that's what I'm saying. Like when I say, and this sounds like I'm joking around when I say it, everything you hit every day is an illusion that was concocted by someone who had the intention to concoct it, right?
Yeah.
So
everything is manipulative.
Everything. I'm not being exaggerating when I say that everything is. And I pick something and I will tell you how it is not your idea. You can't prove to me that it's real. Like money, for instance. A lot of people say money off the first one when I challenge them. Money's real. I have to go spend it, whatever, right? I can prove in 2 seconds that it's not real. And I can use Iraq, right? You remember what happened in Iraq, right? Regime was toppled.
Okay.
So the Iraq had a currency, right? And they used it to buy stuff. And when their government toppled, there was money all over the streets. And nobody was picking it up because nobody would accept it anymore.
Yeah.
So how did it go from money's a real thing to now we'll just let it roll on the ground because it doesn't actually do anything? It was an illusion the whole time. It's only the people that believe that I'm going to receive this because I'm going to be able to spend it. And as soon as you distrust the fact that somebody's not going to take that money from you, you're not going to take it from anybody else. The
Yeah.
illusion gets broken in that moment.
I remember the first time I ever heard about like Bitcoin or any of that type of stuff. I was so confused because I said, but is it money? And they're like, well, it's not like, money. It's another form of currency. And I'm like, but it's not real. Like, do you hold it? And they're like, well, it's digital and you can buy stuff. And I said, but it's not money. Well, no. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And I was so confused. And I had to learn this lesson of the difference between actual money and maybe just something of value, something that could be used as currency, something is valuable in a certain way. You can get things for it. I mean, look at bartering. You can barter and not actually use money. It's the value tied to things and what that can control. And it was just like, oh, yeah. So, I mean, you could have $100 bill one day and think this is awesome. And then years down the road, you have that same $100 bill and everyone's like, what are you going to do with that? Frame it? Show people what it used to be?
So real stuff. And this is what, in science, you take a compound and you divide it into its divisible pieces. So you just keep separating it out. And when it no longer can become divisible, then you have a core component that makes that thing. But then you get as real as it can. I don't think anything's real, but you get as real as it could be. So you mentioned bartering. Bartering can even go lower than that, because if you go, what's below bartering?
I don't know. What's below bartering?
So if we didn't know each other and I had some stuff, you had some stuff, the principle is the exchange of goods for something that the other person holds of value, right? That is the definition of bartering. I don't necessarily think there's anything below that, because that's the origin step of cryptocurrency or money or whatever. Those are just sophisticated analogs for what bartering would be. If you distill it all the way down, you get to bartering.
Yeah. So then, money's useless. Not useless, but
not real.
It's a form. It's a form of.
It's an illusion.
Yeah.
It's an illusion. Yes. And okay, so I want you to challenge me on this. Think of something that is not an illusion. Government's an illusion.
Time is an illusion. Not an illusion. Bartering.
Bartering's not an illusion.
That's all I got.
Okay. Well, we'll skip that part, because I think we came to the conclusion that I'm right. Everything is a freaking illusion. And
I mean, look at the things you use every day. Everybody uses their cell phone. Well, there's a million ways cell phones are used to manipulate us. Even the colors on the cell phone does things with our brain to make us want to use the cell phone. Then, of course, anything you do on the cell phone translates to what you're served on the internet from advertising companies or anything that is listening to the buzzwords. I mean, it's all related. You look at something on the computer, you click on something that you find interesting. Now, all of a sudden, that same topic is everywhere you look. And it's like, what ideas are ours and what is fed to us? I feel like almost everything we have in our daily lives was somehow fed to us. We were manipulated into getting it.
Okay. So we use the rip the Band-Aid off thing. So if we know all of this, okay, how many times can you say we're being manipulated, but still participate in the manipulation? How many times can we say money's not real, but then go around and use money? It's not.
Yeah, and because it's not always necessarily a bad thing. When it comes to advertising and being served ads, and some people get all up in arms about being that, like, oh, they're listening to what I'm saying, they're looking at what I'm looking at on the internet, and then I get served all these ads. And can that be annoying? Sure. But if you truly are showing me something that I am interested in, I want to know more about, then am I annoyed by it? Or am I kind of glad that, hey, the information I would have liked to have known was just served to me?
But it's a matter of time. Like it's the hypnotist example. If advertisers can reach you and serve you something you need, it's only a matter of time before an advertiser reaches you and makes you do something that you didn't want to do.
Yeah.
Because that is what human tendencies do. We are that way. It's part of us. So either we can pretend like we're not, that we are moral and virtuous, and that we'll be totally responsible. No, you do that. You do work from home. I'll be totally responsible. Everybody will.
Seriously, I have so much integrity. I'm not going to do anything I shouldn't do.
The majority of the population, if they saw a wallet and there was $100 bills hanging out, most everybody would find the person that it belongs to. Totally.
Nobody thinks about doing bad
stuff.
stuff.
If you realize that it's all fabrication and you have people that are smarter than other people and they're able to dominate them, shouldn't we just let them go, give them the green light, totally dominate the dumber people in society, let the dumber people get destroyed, and then we have a new crop of smart people who then the dumb people can't breed anymore because they were completely dominated by the stronger deal. And then maybe those smart people become next generation's dumb people, and then they get dominated. And so we just teach it that, hey, sometimes you're going to be the person that's going to win the war, and sometimes it's going to be able to lose the war. But that transition between when you are the oppressor, right? You will take advantage and make you buy a hamburger every time because you're in the power position. It's only until you're the oppressee, they're like, shit, they freaking totally got me. Now I'm all of a sudden against this manipulative shit. So if you're the victim of it, you hate it. And if you're doing it, then you absolutely love it and think that the world should be dominated, right? So let's just say we made some manipulative rules from the virtuous side, okay? So a country declares war on another country. The people who declare the war have to go fight the war. So if you're sitting in an office and you're like, yeah, nationalism, let's go beat them.
Yeah.
They come in, suit you up, give you a gun, and say, go. Now you can't be the authoritative that victimizes another person. You can be both the authority and the victim. Now, the next time, after it's like, no, hold on. I changed my vote. I do not want to go to war now. I got things to do. I'm smart.
I don't want to go.
I've got
and
obligations.
Do that.
I don't want to. And now next time, right, when you actually have the skin in the game, and it's you who's going to be doing the thing. There's no victim to push your, the consequences on. It's you. Now you make different decisions because you're on both sides of that equation. That's really the only way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that example has always been close to me because we're part of a military family. And so every time somebody would be in a discussion about anything political, when somebody automatically threw that, well, we need to send our troops. Well, let's go fight them. I'll be like, okay, are you going to go? Are you going? Are you sending your son? Are you sending your daughter? Are you sending your spouse? If you say 100%, this is such a good cause to me, I will go. All right. But if you're like, well, I don't want to do it. Well, then maybe you should keep looking into this and let me know if you really think that's the right answer.
Okay. So let's just say tax policy. We'll take two groups. We'll take ultra wealthy people and we'll take ultra poor people, right? Right now, ultra wealthy people, they set tax policy for everyone. All right. Do you think that they are mean with their tax policy?
They're mean?
They're mean.
Like greedy or just
mean?
Just mean.
The mean. The actions create victims. Their actions create consequences for people who are not them.
I mean, I guess it can. I don't know if it's all right. To say is it mean means their intention is to be mean to someone.
No, just the consequence.
I feel like anything anybody does will create something for someone else.
Just for this illustration, we'll say, do you think the decisions they make do not affect them, but they affect other people negatively?
No, I think it would affect them too. Anything they make is going to affect a bunch of people.
Okay, so mean or no mean?
No, I don't like the word mean.
Okay, do you think they would self-serve, to serve their own interests?
Yeah.
So serve their own interest and really not mean. That's what you're going with?
Possibly.
Okay. So now let's take the tax policy and we're going to reverse roles and we're going to put the really uber poor people Now they're all of a sudden in charge of tax policy. They make all the tax policy decisions. Are they mean with what they inflict on other people?
Or self-serving?
Both. Self-serving and mean. Do you think they would be noble and virtuous, where the rich people were not mean but self-serving? What do you think the poor people will do in that same position?
I think they will do the same thing.
Why? Because it's human beings, right? So if you have human beings in a position of authority, they will always create consequence for other people, and they will enrich themselves. But you would have told me that because you know what human beings are. So if it's a position and there's a human being in charge of it, it will always be inflicting consequences on someone who's not them while bringing new benefits to them in every position, everywhere.
That's funny. I just this morning saw somebody share a post on Facebook that said, just think, all of this could have been solved if we would just tax the wealthy. And I'm like, really? Really? That's it? That's all we got to do?
But there was some person 50, 100 years ago, right? When normal people didn't have a voice, never put on the public airwaves, kept completely distanced, right, from having their voice be heard. And somebody said, man, that is a tragedy that these normal people just can't be heard, right? So then we're like, I know how we write this. We take people who don't have a voice and give them a voice. And then we're like, maybe that wasn't our, maybe there was a net benefit for keeping really unintelligent people from saying stuff, because all they then do is create more unintelligent people that now have confidence in their total lack of intelligence. So you don't get the utopia that you're after when you pursue it, where you take that people are self-serving and they create consequences from other people, right? You keep it, and this is the roots of my libertarianism, is that the more complicated and evolved you get to a society, the more likely it breaks down. And for all the things that you're doing that have really good intent but never end up working out. So it'd be great. Communism is, in theory, is awesome. Mathematically, it will never, ever, 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 ever work. All right? If you had, if you took all the wealth and just gave it to poor people, right? What do you think would happen?
You just
That's it.
created the same thing.
And yeah, exactly. So at one point, education was locked up in the temples, right? Regular people didn't get to go to school. They didn't get to learn anything, right? They were peasants. They did what peasants could do. They used their labor. And then you had the educated, were the people who had more influence, more property, more assets. They got to go learn stuff. And then, bing, this pursuit, this utopia, this ideal that, hey, what about these people? They should get educated, and then they will become better, more sophisticated, be able to do things they couldn't do before. Now, okay, we're bastardizing education. We're teaching things that aren't true. We have these debates about sciences and environmentalism and all that kind of stuff that it was, if we would have just held it and let the monks, right, have all of the education and all the information of the time, then at least you had somebody trust with authority that can dole it out to people who would have been well received, and they could have done things. You need a gatekeeper.
Yeah.
But if the gatekeepers can then be corrupted, right, then you can't trust the gatekeepers anymore. And you see this theme go all throughout history.
So would you say, here's sort of an example my brain just concocted,
Yeah.
so it may or may not make sense. You take sort of the classes where maybe this lower class is not as educated as another, and hey, if we could just give them more education and help them in that department, they then can sort of rise up and become out of their poverty, out of their situation. They can better themselves in their future.
Sounds good.
Years and time goes by and it morphs into, well, now in order to do that, you need university. You need this level of education so that you can rise up and better yourself. But to get it, we need a lot of money from you, which you don't have because you're poor and in this situation. But in order to get out of that situation, you need education. All right, well, can I go to university? Yeah, except you need money. And then it's just sort of this, what? Hence why people are saying, well, college, what a scam. Why can't they get education without having to go into debt? Isn't there other forms of education that's not business oriented?
It's a good example, and inflation is a good example of this too. So let's just say that a loaf of bread costs $2, right? And you have $100, and so you can buy some bread. And the government says, I'm going to give you some money, right? I'm going to give you $200. But then the bread costs $4. So did you make it, or everything that you buy doubles? Mm-hmm. So you got double the money, but then everything doubled in cost, right? Mm. Did you move anywhere? Did you go anywhere? It felt like you put a bigger number in your account, but when you went to spend the money, it was the exact same thing. So maybe there's a peasant that exists right now that is an equal to where peasants were before education, where we just flooded and inflated what education means. We just created a new peasant that has, there's definitely some benefits underneath it. I mean, you're not herding cows or herding sheep and living in a straw bed, right?
Yeah.
But it's still an analog with where things were at. Like, what's still out of your reach? What are you not being permitted into? What do you have to give up to be able to get? So maybe what's below this is evolved truth, things that weren't manipulated into it. And maybe this is the real stuff below the peasant, because you can make an argument for things got better. Like, your peasant today has 2 TVs in their house, where the peasant that was sheep herding, what was the version of that when they were there? Maybe they had 2 teapots in their house, and that was their TVs of the day. You see what I mean?
Yeah. And I keep, this is maybe going in another direction. I think a lot about, when I hear things like this, I think a lot about why are some people in that rich category and others are not? What all goes into someone saying these people are wealthy and these people can't seem to get out of poverty? Why not? How did one get here? And I'm not talking about like born into it. Like, if your family has generational wealth, you were born into that and now you've inherited wealth. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about 2 people from the get-go make their own way. How do they become so different? And so I think about that a lot. Like, is it choices they make? Is it decisions along the way? Is it anything that is not of their control most of the time? Are there certain situations? Sure. But most of the time, how do we get this way?
The reason you think about this is this too is an illusion. Imagine that.
Okay.
So I like this topic a lot. It makes people mad, but it's still a good topic.
Everything makes people mad.
So the real world, the real truth is you have a person and you have a thing, and the 2 barter, and I will do a deal with you where I give you a thing and you give me something that is equal value, and I'll keep doing that trade. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. If you think of some kind of scheme that you get to get more than you give, right, then nobody's going to want to trade with you anymore. So in order for you to then up what you get, you have to either think about how to give more, get better, more sophisticated, better product, more innovations, or you have to create a scheme where you only have to do a little and you get more for doing a little. So the structure of the illusion is, let's take somebody who sweeps floor at General Motors and makes $70 an hour. Well, realistically, if you took and put an ad out and said, sweep floors, and I'm going to hire the best floor sweeper, right? And I'm going to basically pay the person who is willing to give me the best product for the least amount of money, because that's what consumers do, right? Mm-hmm. Would I end up with $70 an hour? No, I had to create an illusion to get somebody to $70. And you have one group that says, well, that's really good. If you believe in the inflation of, the value of something, devaluing something, because so you're a floor sweeper, you're making $70 an hour, your only skill is being a really good floor sweeper. Do you have any fear or anxieties that if this company that's paying you $70 goes out of business and goes away, that you can take your skill and go anywhere else and everybody's going to be like, oh, floor sweeper, $70 an hour?
Do I have fear or anxiety?
Would that person have fear and anxiety knowing that they're probably not going to create that illusion anywhere outside that, General Motors complex?
You would think.
So you have a group. You have you have the less than ones, and those are people that are not being traded fairly for their time. Right? They put out an hour of labor and it's something that should be paid higher and they're not being given. So that's your first strata. Those are the people that are really impoverished and having trouble. And the middle part is responsible for them, by the way. And those people,
the ones that are having trouble climbing out the middle
part.
Well,
I'll explain it.
Okay.
I'll come back.
I'm just making sure I'm following you.
And then you got the 1-for-1s, right? Uh-huh. They show up for 8 hours. They get paid for 8 hours. And every day they can say, I gave better value than whoever paid me. Okay, so those are the 1-for-1s. And then the ones right above that is where the illusions start happening, where people negotiate a trade where they're giving far less than they're receiving. And they get away with it by making it fairly complicated and very unpeaceful and, by ripping value away from what they're responsible for giving, but, sort of like magnifying the compensation for whatever it is that they give. And I call these people, and I hate these people. I really do. So these people are the sweet deal people. All right. So if I'm a government worker and I am granted $125 or $125,000 a year, and I don't have to go to the office and I don't even have to tell people what I do, and I don't have a manager that I really have to check in. And if I just do the bare minimum, I can get $125,000, right? Again, it doesn't pass my test where if I took that job, went after the merit of somebody to do it, I wouldn't arrive at $125,000. I have to make it a sweet deal because I make it whether or not I do something or not. Nobody knows really what I do. The people paying the bill don't know what it is that you do. They wouldn't rehire you if they fired you tomorrow. They wouldn't even notice or miss you if you went missing, right? Mm-hmm. And so the market wouldn't support it. I wouldn't support it. So the sweet deal people have somehow managed to suck resources out of the system, right, through their schemes, which dried up the resources to pay dollar for dollar. So if I'm paying this person 10 times their value that they're putting into the marketplace, there's not any leftover money to pay the dude down on the 1-for-1 scale because they're not going to complain. They have the least amount of sway and leverage. These people have all the sway. You can't fire them. You can't even send them an email and say, "Give me 5 bullet points of what you do for a living." Right? They're protected. So the protected class of overvalued people are very numerous. And then you have what you alluded to in the top part, which is you have the people who got off of the 1-for-1 value and are playing a completely separate game. Right? We look at like billionaires. We talk about people who are making X amount of dollars per hour or per month per year, and we compare them against someone who probably doesn't even draw a paycheck. They live completely off of the assets that they've created and whatever. Mm-hmm. So when we start making these comparisons, I think these people could teach these people how to remove themselves from that whole game. The people on the sweet deal portion are sucking up all the resources and not giving good value to the marketplace. Right? Mm-hmm. If we can somehow take those people and push their assets down, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, because I feel like I've had quite a few jobs where I've heard things in my life where if I got something new, if I got a new car, a new whatever, and you almost hear this like, oh, that must be nice. That must be nice. It's always from the people that were around me that cut corners. I've had multiple jobs where I was the first one in. I was the last to leave. I handled things nobody else wanted to do. the coworkers at the same job who have the same guidelines would come in late, would leave early, would not do things I was willing to do, would not go above and beyond, barely did the minimum, want to then say, oh, must be nice that you were able, oh, must be nice that you have that. It is, because I worked for it. And so that's sort of when would you say that is sort of an example of that middle ground of, it's not even one for one. It's I did this and I got compensated for this. It's I want to be compensated even if I cut corners, even if I don't give good value. You should just keep paying me what you're paying the person that does come in early and stay late and goes above and beyond and finds money for the company and whatnot. You know, like, is that the middle ground sort of that you're talking about?
There's a portion of sweet deal in that too. And that's why it's sort of like a gradient from these below one all the way up to sweet deal. Okay. So if somebody in a workplace works an 8-hour day and they get paid for an 8-hour day, do they give 8 hours worth of work?
Most likely not.
Okay, so let's just say AI started looking at everything that you do. You're wearing bios, it can see your keystrokes. And it basically, whatever you do, right, you get paid for. So if you show up and you don't do anything, then the algorithm doesn't really calculate things that you didn't do. So you're not required to come in for 8 hours. You just get paid for the work output that you do. And then the people that work really hard and don't cut corners, they get paid more. And the people who don't get paid less. Now, who would fight that? It wouldn't be the people who work their ass off and work 12 hours a day and get a ton of shit done. They'd be like, I'm all for that.
Yeah. Pay me for what I just did.
Who would?
The ones that are not going to do that.
Right?
Yeah.
But right now, who's collecting a full day's worth of pay, right? And they're scheming and scamming on the bottom side of things that are cutting. Do you know why the best teachers can't get paid more than the worst teachers? Because they're dividing it and they're backfilling the people who are shitheads, right? And scheming the resources off of those, just like that middle sweet deal people are taking instead of having, 20 floor sweepers for the cost of one floor sweeper, they're stuck with it. You can't get rid of them and they don't exist elsewhere in the marketplace.
This almost makes me think of the whole group tip jar at bars and stuff. Like, you ever go to a bar and on the bar is a tip jar or a coffee shop and that just gets split among everyone. Yeah. To me, I see that and I'm just like, oh, what a shame. Yeah. What a shame.
Somebody worked really hard and someone didn't do shit and they're going to get paid.
They just get their cut because they were there that day, even if they hardly lifted a finger. And the person that had the amazing customer service, running their ass off, working really hard, bringing in money for the company, gets the same cut because they were there that day. I'm just like, oh, I wish you would just let people tip who's waiting on them.
That would be a more truthful method of doing it. But you would have to be willing to let the weak be conquered, right? And so this is a whole different topic, but maybe we'll get into it. We got time. So if you let the weak get conquered, which means that the AI is now spinning around and it's taking the people who don't do shit, right? And it's giving them the ability to just, go through their vices, not make any money, and complaining the whole time. But the AI doesn't give two shits about how you feel about not being paid. So now you have two choices: to not do anything and just start killing and robbing people, or
I was just going to say, because it leads to crime.
Getting on board and just upping your production and upping your value with what you're going to trade. So if you're to put percentages on, if you take that Lustrata, who would definitely hate the fact that AI is governing this thing now, what percentage of them would go the right way because now there's proper constraints and now they're being watched and now they have to be honest, and which ones would be like, F this, I'm just going to go to the people who are doing the job and steal from them? Because that same math was in it, but it was a peaceful math. This is just a truthful math where the weak are conquering the poor. A portion of them get straightened out by it, but a portion of them do not. And then they come and take from these people. And now you have a different problem to try to solve.
Yeah, I saw so many people when we kept hearing about the emails being sent out to, hey, I want you to respond back with 5 things you did today or what your job entails. I saw somebody post, they're like, man, if I got that email, I'd give it a big middle finger. And I'm like, because you don't like who it was sent from? Because at any given moment, your boss where you work could very well say, "What did you do today? Can you explain to me anything you accomplished today?" And you're going to have to answer. So I bet you won't give the middle finger. And then I almost made a post the other day that was like, show me anyone that has not at one point or another wished your coworkers would have received that email.
Mm-hmm.
Like, tell me you would not love to see some people you have worked alongside of at some jobs have to explain what they do all day.
Let's boil it down to the barter side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we made this illusion where this employment thing is this concocted thing. We lost complete handle on the reality of what's going on there. But when you go down to bartering, it's you and I've got the thing that you want, and you've got the thing that I want. So we're doing it, and I can see that I have the thing, and you have the thing. I trust you, like whatever. Let's just say we've been doing that for a little while. And I'm just like, hey, honor system, just leave the stuff there, and I'll leave the stuff. We trust each other. You'll come through. You're good for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what if every once in a while I just wanted to make sure that I looked in the silo to see if you were really throwing the grain in there? And I as a consumer, I'd be like, I've been paying for this stuff, and I trusted you, but every once in a while, to keep you honest, I want to make sure that you're not like, he's not even checking that, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to collect my part of it, but I'm not going to put anything in there this time. So every once in a while, to keep you honest, like maybe once a month, I'll go measure, and I'll be like, hey, dude, a couple times you might have missed or something like that, whatever. When you boil it down to that, and you use the analogy to point that towards employment, that should be happening more regular. Or do you think people, even if they were fairly honest, right, would have 100% of the time come through and fulfilled the obligation of it? Or if they could get away with not doing it because no one was checking, that if they skipped it or they were hard or it was a bad month or whatever, that they would not do it and hope that you never noticed.
Yeah, because I was just going to say, it doesn't even almost have to be, let me just check in and keep you honest. It could just simply be, hey, let me go ahead and do almost an audit, if you will, to make sure maybe you think you're doing it right, but, oh, there's something we missed. We better backtrack and redo this. We're missing something. And it's not about someone being dishonest, but human error is a thing. Misunderstanding is a thing. So, yeah, let's have a look-see every so often.
Yeah, and not because, I mean, if you had a friend and they said, can I borrow $20, right? Would you do it?
Yeah.
Okay. I would not. Not in a million years.
No?
No. I know human beings, right? And if I valued the friendship, I'm never going to create the temptation. I'll give somebody a gift if they're like, can I borrow $20? If I can, I would give it to you.
That's probably, yeah.
And I would not expect it back.
I was
right?
going to say, I don't know if I would push for it back. If
No.
I'm going to give it,
No.
I better be okay to part with it.
100%. Because if somebody needs $20, they're probably in a predicament. And the chances when they go to repay it to me that they're not going to be a predicament is pretty low, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm not going to put myself or them in that position. You're in a bad spot. So if you want advice about how to not be lacking $20, I'll share the information with you so you don't get in that predicament again. But to just backfill a symptom, no way in hell I'm going to put a friendship through that.
Yeah. Oh, God. That's a whole other topic, too, I'd love to get onto is friendship and money is so sticky. I hate going out with friends, like close friends, and there being any sort of awkward exchange of money. Like, hey, let's go do this. Okay, great. Well, where's your half? You give me your half, I'll give you my half. Especially in situations that it's very difficult to figure out half. And we can get into details to sort of make my point a little clearer. But it's such an uncomfortable thing. You know, like, okay, let's say you live out of state from a very good friend of yours. And your family decides, we're going to go visit this friend. It's been a long time. Let's go travel and we're going to visit. And you spend probably, I don't know, a few $100s on some travel arrangements to get there. And then you get there, and some of the plans are, hey, we're going to go to dinner together. Maybe we're all going to go to the zoo. We're going to do whatever. And once you get there, the friend seems pretty nitpicky on, hey, what we better split this. And hey, we better split. How much is your portion? How much is my portion? And let's make sure we split it. And you're like, okay, knowing I also spent hundreds of dollars to even get here. Do you like situations like that? How do you feel about situations
it's revealing in the same way we talked about either. If you have a bunch of people that you travel with, right, and they know that they want to give more than they received on something, then it's a different ballgame than you have people that are trying to get more than they gave in that value. So if I work an 8-hour day and I want to see if I can get 12 hours worth of value from it, those are people. I had a similar circumstance. We used to go to NASCAR races, and I would rent a motorhome for a bunch of us to go down. I would go, rent it, whatever. And we split it with all the people that went. And when I got to the ledger at the end of it, even though some people gave me some money towards it, my portion was the biggest portion of put into it, the time and material. Now, if I were with a bunch of other people, I would look at the ledger and say, holy shit, like, yeah, I spent some time, but they almost covered all of it. But the scarcity mind thinking created the illusion in money where you're trying to get more than you give, right? And then that's where we're at in employment, in finance, in government. Getting without giving is the standard. So that's why in your example, you should have the same phenomenon occur to you as well. That like, holy shit, like I did the arrangements and I'll do this again, right? I got way more money than I put into it. Next time you say, hey, who's going to manage this thing? I'm like, I'm in. I almost got a free trip out of it. But it's never that because of the people that are involved.
Yeah, it's never like, okay, well, here's what it will cost everyone, and let's come up with a game plan of what's feasible and fair. It's like, it's just, it always feels like at some point something gets one-sided and it's awkward. And that's why, like, I won't even, if I'm out with friends and I decide, like, hey, guys, first round's on me. And they want to say, okay, well, then I got your cover. That's nice. But I'm not even going to offer without expecting nothing in return. Because I hate that situation. You know, like, I had a friend, was in town from out of state, drove a long way to see me. We went out, and so I paid. I paid for dinner completely. And she's like, wait a minute. No, you don't have to pay for my dinner. And I'm like, it's the least I could do. You just spent how much money even getting here? You didn't have to come see me. So please let me do this. It's the awkwardness when if I were to say, you just came all the way here. You spent all this money when you didn't have to. By the way, you still owe me like $10 more for that.
Scarcity thinking.
Oh, I don't
Here's
like
a story
that.
I read on X over the weekend, and this is fitting for this conversation. So a guy was telling a story about how when he went into the office, he sent a group text out that said, I'm going to Dunkin' Donuts. Does anybody want anything? Right? Mm-hmm. And so he spent, we'll say, $40 on the entire order, and he walks in with, 20 orders. And when he left, right, everybody took all their stuff. So they took the value of what was delivered. And when he counted up what everybody gave him, he got a lot of, I'll get you tomorrow's, and it was $4.50, but all I got is $4s. And when he looked at it, he said, I will never announce that I'm going somewhere because the people who participate aren't looking to give me more than they got. Yeah. They weren't giving me service fees and tips and more. They were doing the opposite, where they were trying to get the coffee at the price minus the time it even took them, right?
Yeah.
And even giving even less than it costs the person who's delivering it, because that is the scarcity mind, personified, embodied.
Oh yeah, and I'm even kind of in the middle of this now, where bunch of girls seeing if we can plan a girls trip, and the location is near the majority of them, not at all near me. And I said, look, I'm in, by all means. This is fun. I'll go and I'll have fun. But when you're looking at expensive, please keep in mind, I'm spending hundreds of dollars to even get there. So if we could take that into consideration, that would be great. But I'm not going to go if I'm not willing to, you know what? I'm going to pay my way there. I'm going to pay everything when I get there. And if it's something I'm doing for fun, I'm going to be willing to do that. But God, those
But
situations
if
are
you just
awkward.
if you just know that's the default setting, and the way we described it is if you're not willing to just bring Dunkin' for everybody and not expect anything, you are 100% of the time going to be let down by the people, because that's what people are. You have to build that into your equation. And so when, and I don't want to, take any wind out of the sails of people who like to be charitable with other people, or at least to be given a 1-for-1. But I can take any single person who felt really badly when you didn't get the full rate on your Dunkin' Donuts and go back through your life, right? And find out how you tried to get away with getting more than you gave, because you think you're getting more value when you're starving something from somebody else, and you're not. You're just creating an entire culture where a majority of the people are looking to get something that they're not deserved. When if we just said, let's infuse in everybody's brain to spend 2 seconds before they do something and make sure they're giving more than they got, problem solved. But that's one of those idealistic things that will absolutely never happen because of those two things we talked about earlier. People will look out for their own interests above everyone else. The selfishness is part of the sauce.
Oh yeah, this has happened recently too. My thing is, I always sort of almost live by that concept, like you fly, I'll buy. If I am putting you out enough to go get me something, and it's reasonably inexpensive, I'll buy yours. Like you were gonna go, you weren't gonna get it for me. I'm saying, hey, can I get in on that with you? And you know what? It's your gas, you're going, it's your time. I'll pay for yours too. And I've done that before with somebody recently where they were just, hey, I'm just gonna run and grab a coffee. No problem. If you get me one, I know it's a pain, especially 2 transactions can just be a pain. I'll buy your coffee if you pick me one up too. And this person was like, no, I don't want to do that. And I was like, I don't mind. No. I'll do 2 transactions. I was like, are you concerned that you're going to owe me? Because I promise you don't. Like, I want to do this for you. No, it's fine. I'll do 2 transactions. And I just kept thinking like, wow, why? Is that because we're all so afraid of like the awkward money conversation and who owes who and the 1-for-1, and what have we become?
Well, what would you have to do to make it not awkward? What makes it awkward?
I don't know. Oh, in my situation?
Just generally, or something that you've experienced.
I think it's awkward. Like for me, it's awkward when it's a close friend, and I don't want there to be any sort of discomfort or anyone feeling some kind of way like, oh, I have to spend all this money and they didn't have to, like anything that would sort of leave a bad taste in someone's mouth.
Do you think it's about money specifically? So if you were like, hey, I'll rake your leaves if you clean my bathtub, right? Would that be awkward? You're exchanging services and you're asking somebody to do something and give up something they have or want for something that you have or you want. Would that be awkward?
Honestly, what comes to mind is like, does one person do a better job than the other? It's like, what's the value?
Well, just the emotional awkwardness when you're having a conversation, asking a person to do something, right? Mm-hmm. Like clean my bathtub. Is that an awkward? They asked you if you'd rake their leaves, so you asked them if they would clean your bathtub. The awkwardness is trying to figure out who's getting more than they're giving.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we'll say, like, let's just say there's a partnership and you have a financier, the person that has the money, with the contractor who puts the labor into it to build something, right? Given enough time, those two people are going to point at each other and say, I'm the contractor. Without me, he wouldn't be able to build this house. And the financier would say, contractor, without the money, he wouldn't have a house to freaking build. And both of them will say that I gave more than the other person. They should have given me more. So that is the breakdown of the giving more than you get. The first person, right, that tries to give less than they got loses. So that awkwardness is us, our brains trying to tell us whether or not we're being maneuvered or we're getting a windfall. And whenever we feel like we're being slighted on the value that we're willing to give up, what do? Our defenses go up, and now we feel like we want to get the next person and take advantage of them. and get more than we give. It's so important. I have T-shirts made with "You have to give more than you get." You have to give more than you get because it's mathematics that is inarguable. And the more people that say "F that," like I'm going to take all that I can get, right? And then the problem is that you get enough people around you that are trying to take. Now, just like the poor people on the bottom of the deal, there's now what do you do with them because they're just going to rob you? Well, the more people that believe into that when they're self-interested in it, the more people that it creates the people that creates now destroy what they thought that they were getting in the very beginning. They thought that they got a good value, right? I drove 7 miles over the speed limit. I made up 10 minutes of time. I got pulled over by a cop, and now I'm 20 minutes behind schedule. It's that kind of math where in the short term, yes, you get a little bit more than you deserve to get, but you break a rule. And the consequences for breaking that rule is all those realized gains that you thought you had evaporated because you created a circumstances that was going to get you down the line. That's where the epiphany?
Well, just a weird... Yeah, just an interesting question for you, I guess. Let's say you were out with some friends, out with a group of people, and you guys know, like, hey, we're going to grab some dinner, we're going to grab some drinks, maybe there's a cover charge where you're going, and once all is said and done, and it's the end of the night, you realize one person covered you. You spent nothing. They covered everything. What do you do in that situation? How do you feel in that situation?
So I carry, and this actually happened to me one time. And so I was driving and I was backing out and I scraped my car on like one of those parking lot yellow poles.
Oh, I've done that at the gas station.
Put a little mark down the side of my car.
Yeah.
And I drove down to the body shop. And I was like, I know I'm going to have this fixed. And he was like, wait. And he walked into the back and he took some, I think it was acetone or something like that. And he did this thing and buffed it out. And it like disappeared. There was no scratches or scrapes. And I was there willing to get this repaired because it was a quarter panel on my car. And I thought he was going to pull some dents out and fix the paint job and whatever.
Yeah.
And here he could have taken the car, done all the stuff to it, and just charged me what I was already willing to pay. But I was like, what do I owe you? He's like, nothing. Right? And then I went home and I was like, I got to do something. My ledger says that I got something. He spent time on me. He could have taken advantage of me if he wanted. So what I did was I took 10 boxes of pizzas and I sent it to his shop and fed all of his guys because I had to clear my ledger that I got something without giving. So I always have to think of maybe it's not in the moment way, but I will always get even. So if I remember somebody paid for dinner, in my brain's ledger, it's like I got to get dinner for them one day because now I got without giving, and now I owe them. So if it's not pizza or paying for dinner, there's gonna be something that everybody's gonna be made good, no matter what they do to me or for me.
See, and that's such an interesting idea too. That like I get it. One time, this isn't nearly as cool as your example, but I ran out of gas one time because I was an idiot and thought I could drive all day with the idiot light on. And I was coming home one night and ran out of gas right inside someone's driveway. Car was stopping. I just needed off the road, and I'm in someone's driveway. They were luckily very sweet people, willing to help, had a can of gas in their garage, not a lot in it, but they're like, this will at least get you to the gas station right over on the other street, filled it up. And I was like, please let me give you like $5, something for your gas. No, absolutely not. We're happy to help. Would not take anything. And I was pretty young. I don't know, maybe 20 or something. And so I went and I bought a very nice thank you card because I didn't know who they were. I don't know these people. And I bought a very nice thank you card, said, I so appreciate your kindness, yada, 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 and put it in their mailbox the next time I drove by. So I totally get that idea of like, I've got to do something. But then how do you make that not a thing? You know, like if you do something kind for somebody and you make it anonymous because you don't want them. Like, have you ever wanted to do something for someone and you're like, last thing I want is for you to think you owe me for this. I don't want you to feel like
I got a
you
hack
owe me.
for you.
Okay.
They've made a movie about this. One of my favorites.
What is it? Pay it forward?
100%.
I love that movie.
100%. So here's what happens. Somebody gives you gas and they don't want to take it. Here's the hack. I will pay it forward. You let that person know they didn't want anything, but you have been charged with helping someone in the same way that person helped you, and you pay it forward. So if you look at the math of a bunch of people that are pursuing pay it forwards, and now it does the opposite where, I'm giving something ahead, even to a different person, right? Who then might be inspired to do it to other people. How that inflicts itself upon changing the chemistry of the brain, because the awkwardness of paying for a dinner, right, is gone, because now you've taken a charitable side of your brain where you're willing to even give to a total stranger using a different mechanism of your thought.
Especially if, let's say, somebody paid for something for you that was so valuable, you can't pay that back. I don't have the money to pay all that back. There's no way what I can do will equal what they just spent. Would you
dollar for dollar though? If a millionaire came and gave you something proportionally to their wealth, right? You could proportionally give something to your wealth as well. So especially if you're not even paying it to them, you're paying it forward. Do something for someone who are at lower level than you, that in their world, they could never pay you back. But to you, it was just something you would spend on a weekend out anyhow.
Yeah.
Right? So again, your job is to clear the ledger where I didn't say dollar figure, that you didn't give equal value to what you got. I didn't say value as in dollars, but value in the person that you're giving it to. And you can change worlds by giving in your world to someone that's below you. You take $100 and you give it to a African tribe that doesn't see any money, whatever, and you can see that they can do tons of shit with that. So I even value pay it forward. And if you haven't seen the movie, was it Kevin Spacey was the teacher?
Yeah, Helen Hunt,
Haley
Joel
Osment.
Yeah.
Okay, and so this little kid had an idea, a class project, of how they were going to change
Bon
the
Jovi
world.
was in that movie.
How they were going to change the world, and he came up with the idea that in this you try to help. What was it? 5 people.
Maybe. I think so.
You try to help someone and you tell them, I'm helping you, and just pay it forward. You don't owe me. Totally not awkward. Nobody would feel awkward being given something and just say, the obligation is gone when you've helped 5 other people. And it works like a reverse pyramid scheme. So those 5 people help 5 more people, and the entire world is helping other people, only requiring them to pay it to the next person.
And it really does make you feel good. Like, there's a company I just recently ordered. It's a makeup company. I ordered some makeup, saw it online, wanted to try it. Tried it, not the right color, doesn't look right, crap, I gotta return it and go through this rigmarole of returning, which is a pain, and you still lose money. Well, I started the return process, and I get this email that says, sorry, this didn't work out. We're trying to, I don't know if they use the term carbon footprint or not, but basically said we're trying to reduce on waste. This is not something we can resell anyways. It's going to get pitched, so we're not going to even bother having you try to send it back. You keep it. We will give you a full refund. We hope that maybe you can gift it to someone and it'll change their life. And I'm like, I love that so much. Yes, I will see if I can change someone's life by offering this and donating it. And I'm going to find something else to buy from your company because I love that policy so much.
Cynical Joe, I hate that policy. I hate that policy.
What? They can't take it back anyways. They can't. What are they going to say? All right, send it back for a full refund. Now I've spent money. They still have to throw it away because they can't use it again.
Okay, so I'm going to go on Reddit and I'm going to pose, hey, this company, if you want something, just do this, say this, and they're just going to tell you to keep it. So now I get 1,000 people that wanted to buy that thing, and then they order it, and they might like it. They actually might want it, and they call up and say, I can't have it. And they're like, oh, yeah, we can't, for carbon footprint, blah, blah, blah.
Because
and
horrible people ruin a great thing.
But that's the thing. Through charity or pay it forward, through an institution like government or schools or churches, any of that stuff will be corrupted within 30 seconds of telling the 90% of the people that would exploit a good thing how now 90% of the people are taking advantage of it and ruining it for the 10%. This is the same theme over and over and over.
Yeah.
when you have an individual, you don't have corruption. When you have an institution, you have corruption.
I got a pair of glasses one time online years and years ago, and they were expensive. And I received them in the mail, and they were a little off. They were a little crooked, and they drove me nuts on my face. And I was like, I can't. These are crooked. They're off. And again, sent the company, hey, I need to start a return. Well, what's wrong? They're kind of crooked. I even sent them a picture of the product on the table, and I said, they're crooked, and they're not going to work. We're so sorry about that. Let us get you the right glasses. You keep those. Hold on to it. Don't return it. We will send you a second pair for free. And again, I'm like, that's amazing customer service. I'm going to tell everyone to use your company. I so appreciate your honesty in this. But yeah, if I were to go online and say, what a great return policy, what a great company, I'll use them again, someone else would be like, this looks like a good way to get 2 glasses for the price of one.
But that's what we do as human beings is we take the pay it forward thing was individuals doing it themselves. If I gave you $100 bill and said, go out in the public and I want you to find a person that needs a $100 bill is a different thing than saying, I'm going to set up a table, set up $100 bills, and let's let people. You might get a person that comes there, but there's an investment in the other person to qualify. You'd be looking for a certain thing. You'd look the best the best value that giving that dollar away that you could get for it because you understand the giving the most value for the opportunity. So you didn't squander it. I put it out there and maybe $100 out of the $1,000 ends up with the person that I expected it to end up with. So my rate is 10%. If I gave you a $100 bill, you could find someone that it would end up at exactly the position 100%. Individuals are very good at implementing this. Institutions are shitbag terrible at it. But we've offloaded all of our responsibilities of charity and mathematics and education and information to the people who will squander it and manipulate us using the medias and their powers and their self-interest to control us. But every day, I was like, oh, we've got a problem. Let's give it to the people who are going to use this to control us and manipulate us. Wrong. When there's something wrong, you're like, how can I give value that I have right now and make the absolute best good into that thing right now? That person's struggling. I'm going there if I can handle it. And if you had a bunch of people in our society that were pay it forwarders, there would be a line to be able to help that person. And what's their obligation? You jump back on your feet. I hope you will go out there and you will help the next person. You gave it giving perfect value because it bought exactly what you wanted, right? And then there's a chance that it might even multiply further because now you converted a person that wasn't doing that into somebody who might do that again. Now you've got extra value. That is the only way to magnify this is to do that individual relationship part.
How do you feel about the whole Starbucks thing? When people, have you ever been in a Starbucks line where people pay behind them? You like that?
It's very nice. Individual to individual. And it's,
you could be paying more. You know, if you got one drink and you paid the car behind you with 5 people in the car, you're giving more. But
that's right. If you're willing, you see the
forward.
little price tag there, right? And if you're willing to pay it, that's a very nice gesture. If, like I said, as long as it, okay, let's change it. Let's just say you're not in a charitable mood, right? And the person did that for you. Now, do you feel an obligation, right? When you're not in that charitable mood.
Maybe all you have is $5 on you. That's
right.
all I got.
The person didn't rescue. You should feel good about it and you should drive off. You don't have to perpetuate it because then what happens is it doesn't feel like a good deed. It felt like you were just a transfer of something that went through you. You don't get the real effects on it. So don't feel obligated to buy the next cart there and pass it through unless you're like, oh, I want to do that too, right?
Yeah.
And then you get to feel good and you get to feel good. But if you're not charitable and you're like, now I got to pay. Don't do it because you've robbed yourself of the neural connections that allow charity to equal feel good. You're making it, charity feel bad. And that's why I'm
because you're thinking, is this cashier going to judge me? Like, whoever breaks it. You know that somebody is thinking,
that's when you should break it. That's when you should break it.
Yeah.
Because it's an individual thing that makes you feel good and you've added value. If you can answer those 3 questions. Am I adding value by paying for... This guy was totally willing to pay for his coffee. He wasn't struggling or in need. And that's why it gets criticism, because you're buying stuff from other people who can clearly afford to have coffee when there are people that would really like coffee, but they don't have any, right?
Yeah.
And so,
yeah.
but if it's filling a position where you needed to feel good, and if it meant the person in line, whether they can afford it or not, it made you feel good, then you gave good value, you got to feel good about it, and you might inspire someone to do something.
That's why I've defended it before too. So I've heard that argument where someone's like, oh, so a bunch of people that have the money for Starbucks, all paying for each other's Starbucks. Oh, good for you. You all could do this anyways. I hope you all felt good about yourselves. And I'm like, you have no idea what that might have meant to someone that day.
Yeah, it might have changed the trajectory.
Yes, and they left here because I had someone do that to me. I wasn't in a long line. It was just me and one other car. They bought mine, and I said, I left there looking for something else I could do.
That's exactly right.
There was no one behind me, so what else can I do that day? And you put that out into the world.
Let's talk about that critic, because those are the value suckers, every one of them. Because in their brain, right, they're looking at what they don't have. They didn't get that thing, right? And so they're looking at other people's stuff to take. Let's tax the billionaires and take the money that's not mine and work a 4-hour day and get paid. Those are the people that we're talking about. Is we don't want them anywhere near it. So their version of stealing, when you have the poor people who don't feel like they're that they want to contribute, that's them. They're revealing themselves as the people that aren't going to get on board and also go be charitable. They're going to then come back, and if you get enough of them, they're going to destroy the sentiment that is supposed to be happening with the people in that line. How it changes people. So we're always talking about that same scarcity robber thug at the bottom that will always try to ruin it. And if you get too many of them, they ruin it outright.
Oh, yeah. I remember I was working in radio years ago, and we would do these remotes out at businesses where maybe it's a car dealership or somewhere, you're broadcasting live, and you have a table full of giveaways, T-shirts, keychains, sometimes food for some of the customers and people there to do business. And they come over and they say, oh, yeah, thanks for a piece of pizza and a T-shirt. And they go in and they do their business dealings. Well, almost always there was a handful of people that heard you were going to be there. They have absolutely no intention of doing any business with that business, but they want free stuff. Part of me was like, you know what? If you're that hard up, come and get yourself a T-shirt. Come grab something to eat. It's fine. But then they will complain that this is all you have? Like, oh, you don't have an extra large? No, I just have these sizes. I can't get this in a whatever. And I'm like, why are you even here? And now you're complaining about the free thing we're offering to the public that you don't have to take. Now, you don't have this in this color? I want to be like, put it down and get out.
I want you to have stickers that say scarcity minded. And anytime you run into someone like that, I want to know in public who the scarcity minded people are. Because I do not want to give them anything, because they're not going to appreciate it. And they're just looking to take free stuff. Free stuff does go over well. So I want to talk to consumer Kelin. And I want you to use as legitimately, as honestly as you can. Okay. So you go to the airport and you bought your flight.
Yeah.
Right? And you're ready to go. Mm-hmm. And the airline says, we oversold this. And Kelin, you're not going to be able to get on this plane because we oversold it. All right? What do you expect in value that this airline give to you to make up for the fact that they made a mistake, and they're totally polite about it? They weren't being an asshole. They followed whatever. But now they've really inconvenienced you all to hell. So use Kelin consumer math and say, what now do you think they owe you?
Kelin consumer math right off the bat would say, you owe me a flight, at least. I want a free flight.
Okay.
It would depend, to me personally, why I was going. If this is like, I was going for a wedding I was part of, I bought the dress, I bought the shoes, I bought the bridal gift, I spent money on this, and that, and I am out all of that because I now can't go to this very important event, That's going to be taken into consideration. If it is simply, it was a weekend to see a friend, I can do it any other time, just reimburse my flight.
What if you have to stay in a hotel because now you have to catch a flight the next morning?
Yep.
Hotel costs. So,
That
okay,
too, yeah.
consumer math is very good. You take all of the things that now are an extra cost that you weren't expecting or anticipated, was not in your calculations, and if they just gave you that stuff, you wouldn't be thrilled about it, but you at least think that, like, okay, I was
you made me whole again.
fairly compensated.
Yeah.
All right, let's reverse it and say, let's just say you go and get on a flight and your bags weighed too much. You took a ton of time at the front counter. You ate too many snacks. Maybe you were big and you took up too much of the other seat. What now do you owe when you inconvenienced the airline for having taken more than really was allocated? More seat space, more time from the person, more food that was allocated. What do you owe the airline now? Same value. Take the consumer thing. What would be owed to the airline from the passenger?
On one hand, yeah, you would have to say, what did I cost you?
Okay.
Compared to what I paid for. The reality is I could see a lot of people being like, well, you guys have stipulations in place to cover that. I feel like a lot of people go to that mindset.
I'm just use your consumer thing. So if I took too much time, should it cost you extra now because at the ticket counter you were difficult? Cost you more? Bags weighed too much. It's going to cost you more. You inconvenienced the person by spilling over into their seat. Now they had to give him a voucher because his experience wasn't great. So now you kind of owe what I had to give him because you caused the thing, right? If you go line by line, if this is a give value no matter what, you wouldn't go to the whole stipulations thing, because I could easily create stipulations that on your ticket, read at the bottom, it says you may be bumped and we're not going to give you shit, right? And then they can go to how's that make you feel if they went to their stipulations? You wouldn't be a very good person, right?
Yeah.
But if they made it right in spite of having the stipulations they didn't have to, then they were being considerate with you because they wasted your time. You had to stay in a hotel. They cost you the experience. And they totally inconvenienced you, but they made you whole in the end. But consumers, right, when they're buying the product, they're looking to get more than they give. They wanted the cheap ticket, more food than was allocated, take more time by being difficult, having suitcase that weighs too much and spilling over to the seat, and not expect a dime more than what they've already paid because of stipulation.
Yeah, it's so funny how when it's one-on-one, when it's two people having an interaction, it's so easy to see the one-for-one on both sides. When it's boss employee, company consumer, when a business aspect is involved, the person that wants more is almost always so quick to pull that, but they're so big, whatever. They have it. They can afford it. I'm just little old me. They're them. And so what do I owe them? Nothing. They can take
So have the painter come to the house and judge you. You got a nice car, so I'm going to charge you double because you can clearly afford it.
Yeah.
It's double the price. That it doesn't track or carry in consistency, right? That's why if the principle is one for one, you don't have to clamor to find exceptions about how it applies to everyone else and everybody else should make convenience there. But me, I'm excluded. That's that scarcity mind is where, bill your employer for 8 hours, but only give them really 4. Because what happens? Then what they do is they trick you and manipulate you by paying you for 4, right?
Yeah.
Knowing they're only going to get 4 out of you. You think you're really getting 8. Now it's bigger illusion because we got sophisticated. We had to outmaneuver and play when we all sat back and think, hey, why don't we just do equal 1 for 1, right? We got so complicated that we don't even know what we're doing anymore. You're hurting the person that comes to work for 8 because why? We're only building 4 hours of work. So if you come in and you're like, hey, I saw 8 hours. I thought I was going to, I'm being paid the same as the guy that's only working 4. And we're like, well, we only really need 4 hours out of you. Then you would say, well, consumer math happens. Well, let me come work 4 hours then, and I'll get paid the same as the person that comes with 8. That would be a 1 for 1, and that would actually be fair, but it breaks the illusion, and the scarcity minded, they're not going to play that game. What happens now when you only get to work 4 and they have to come for a full 8 hours? What are they going to demand? They're not looking to give more value. They're going to be like, hey, you ever hear that example about the bonus?
I don't think so.
All right. I'm going to make up names and probably paraphrase the whole thing. But dude got a year-end bonus, right? He got a check that was like $2,000. And he was like, man, they very much value me. I love this place. I got this 2,000 bonus. And he's happy and he's walking around and he was like, John, like, can you believe this place gave me a bonus? He's like, yeah, this 10,000 was awesome. Now, all of a sudden, all of his excitement and appreciation and feeling appreciated went out the window, right? Because now he feels like he got shafted, which is a proper accounting, right, of that comparison, right?
Yeah.
But think about that, even what it did in your head when you heard that story. It was cool until you found out somebody got something you didn't get.
Yeah.
That is the seed of scarcity thinking. Because when you look around at the billionaires and you have people reinforcing that people are ahead of you because you're a victim and they have something that you don't, then all of the principles and hacks that I can give you to get into the next strata, working hard and whatever, right? Mm-hmm. It ruins it, because then the minute that you find out that you're doing this, you're going to find somebody who did less than you making more than you, and all of a sudden you're in John's spot again, right? Looking at what you didn't get.
And that's the big thing. When you threw in there somebody who did less making more. Like I was in a situation years ago. I was working at this company. A bunch of coworkers were sort of sitting around chatting one day up at the front desk, whatever. And somehow it came up what everybody makes. And I guess I'm like of that old school mindset. Maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's not, that you don't talk about what you make with your coworkers. It never ends well. And so somehow the topic of conversation came up, what everybody makes. Oh, I think one girl found out there were checks or something on somebody's desk or something, and starts talking about what everybody makes, which ultimately, of course, led to a fight, finding out, well, this person makes this and this person makes this. And I'm sitting back and again, I'm thinking, okay, until this conversation, I didn't know what they made. I do now. And how is it that person, I've been here longer. My work day is longer. I do more and they make more than me. Mm-hmm. And all I could think is like, all right, there's gotta be, like, my brain starts going, are they certified in something I'm not? Are they schooled more than I am? And I'm just like, and all I could do is stew and be like, I wish we would have never started this conversation.
No, that was the illusion breaking truth that if it were out there and AI was over top of you and giving you a 1-for-1 value, you wouldn't need to know. Like, you would be able to look at what they made and be curious, not like you were being slighted. It's what more can I do? What more value can I give so I can be that too? But it's the opposite in our illusion, where it's downward spiral. We're looking to do less and get more. And that sweet spot is growing every year of people being overpaid, giving less value, right? And then they have the support of the masses to keep putting more cost and liability.
So what would you have done if you were there and you're with coworkers and you've been there longer, you stay longer every day, you do more to help every day, and you find out that one of the other ones is making more.
This is your moment to get 1-for-1, right? You go into the manager that does the payroll, mm-hmm. right? And I would ask, what goes in to the formulation of compensation, right? And is it arbitrary, where the boss's daughter gets something more than someone who's not the boss's daughter? And institutional change happens when the people are looking at it saying the math doesn't jive. So what would you do if the guy in the counter in front of you, going to the same place, airline ticket, paid $100 and you paid $600? What would you do?
I probably want to know why.
What can I do to get 150? And you'd ask that person, what if it's not anything that's under your control? It's a completely arbitrary, where when they hit the button, it's like a wheel, like a slot machine wheel. And the price comes up, you're going to be mad. You're going to be like, no, that's bullshit. You should set this on real things. So maybe it's cheaper if I buy it earlier. Did you buy it earlier? No? Okay, it didn't apply to you. But at least you know the formulation that says what equals me being paid X. If it's in a mysterious vacuum, right? You're not under control, and it's whatever somebody feels like it being.
Yeah, because you very well could say, well, you have to do these 5 things. Well, I do all 5 of those. Oh, so can I make more money? No. Now you have a decision to make.
Okay, there's the other side. I bet you it's not you. I bet you it's that person needs to make less money. All right, that's the real conversation. So so if you're doing the work and you're hitting your benchmarks, I bet you are being notched down to pay for the scarcity minded, who maybe that managers say, you know what, you only put a 4-hour day in, let's cut your pay in half. So what if we did the same thing, that employers could go both directions, right? You have a yearly review, and if you're doing better, it goes up, and if you're doing worse, it goes down. And then
because I've had it where it goes up or stays the same. But
but it can go down too. So if you did worse this year, so last year you were at 100 and now you're at 70, so now you're going to get moved down a couple of notches, right? And then
because employees won't do that. They'll be like, oh, then I'm out.
So you got to deal with the illusion then, and all of these things we're talking about are the prickly thorns that are part of the illusion. So there's going to be people making more than you. Why? Because employers have to backfill the illusion so that it carries. As long as we like the illusion it's working out, we'll tolerate it. But if we want one for one, and you're cool with just making for your effort, some people are going to like that, and a different set of people are not going to like that. It's versus like, do we like the lie more than we like the truth? And most people are going to like the lie more because, what I said earlier in the program, it is in their self-interest. The lie supports them in what they do. So long there are more liars in that benefiting from it, you're going to attract more liars into it. And then you just get a bunch of people who buy into the illusion like it were a religion. That's where we're at.
But ultimately, then you would say in that situation that you go and you say, hey, how do I make this much? If they say, well, it's because they do this and this, and you're like, okay, can I show you where I just did all of that too? Well, it is what it is. That's kind of it then, right? Then you decide whether you want to live with it or not.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's only part of the illusion, is you get to choose or not choose. And that's a sucky way of doing things, because no matter, it's basically all bad choices, right? When it's based on math, there's no such thing as a bad choice. It's let me look at the formula. And if it's based on the other thing, and I guess it's possible to pull off the illusion version as long as you have intelligent people managing it, where even if you did formulate it, it's close to being accurate. So, the guy that stays there all day and works his ass off, he absolutely makes more money than the person who slacks off. As long as that tracks, then even if you formulated it, they kind of know what the math would say anyway. Rewarding the ones who work harder, and not rewarding the ones that don't work as hard. But so long that it gets skewed, and any institution will get corruption. The boss's daughter making more money skews the math so that there's another person that makes more money. And then the illusion and the lie is so thick that if anybody looked at the numbers, nobody would agree with that they're accurate or truthful or where they should be.
Well, and then I wondered, how do you feel? So in this situation, it was a medical office, people with different backgrounds. If someone has a background in something, and so that sort of gives them value to make a certain pay. However, in their situation, in their daily current job, the job they're doing is the exact same job in the exact same position as someone who does not have that certification. Does the person with the certification still deserve to make more? Or is it based on the job, not your certification background?
That's an illusion talk, because in the real formulation, use my financier and contractor. So they need one another, right? Mm-hmm. And both of them, there are contractors that charge $100 an hour, and there's contractors that charge $1,000 an hour. If we're standing in front of each other, we have to be able to break up with each other at any given time. So I have to be able to say, hey, I know I have what I have in you, and I know what I have in you, and I respect you. I need you, you need me, right? But I also have to be able to go to other contractors. And if an other contractor is willing to do it less and give more, then I shop amongst other people who can make me happy. I got to make you happy, and you got to make me happy. In our culture, it is way slanted towards an employee, and the illusion is that you're comparing yourself against people that are right alongside of you. Pick the sweeper at GM, right? $70 an hour. And he's looking at other guys that are making $55 an hour sweeping. That's buying into an illusion that it's all fake. You're in an ecosystem that is all fake. I have to compare it against if I went to a deserted island, right? Not a deserted island, but another city. And I put out a help wanted ad. Someone who's a really talented floor sweeper that works hours, interviewed a bunch of people, and I took somebody who was willing to do the job with what I was paying to do them, and here it's $30 an hour. That's the comparison about if you go elsewhere, do you have it situated right? Right?
Yeah.
So it...
Because you could say, well, screw this. He's making more than me. I'm going to go elsewhere. And then elsewhere is like, oh, I wouldn't even have paid you that.
It's exactly right.
You're
when you're in that illusion, like the cell phones, you would say that this is, like I said, is a cell phone an illusion?
Well, yes.
Why is it an illusion? I only have one example. I can only come up with one example.
I don't know. What's your example?
Okay. It is not an illusion for you and me. Well, no, it is. It is an illusion.
Okay.
For you and me, it is not an illusion, because if I handed you this, you'd know exactly what to do with it. It's a cell phone. You can get on the internet. You can make phone calls. I go to an Amazon tribe that has never seen a human being again, and I hand this to them. They're not going to make a call or check their email or whatever. They're probably going to use it as a primitive tool to hammer something into a tree, right?
Yeah.
It is an illusion because if you're in an ecosystem where it's people that have the same experiences and whatever, then it tracks. If you go outside of that and no longer does the characteristics of this thing universal to the people that you're trying to deliver it to, then it's just an illusion that only existed in that workspace. And that's why, the true test, the acid test of it is if you break up, like we really love each other and our relationship is solid. And then I say, cool, I'm going to say, we're going to break up. We're going to spend 30 days away from each other. And then if we come back together again, right, and we didn't break every rule that there was, then absolutely we are. But the only way to test it is to put it in an ecosystem that is not this one, not the same house, not the same state, not the same gravity, it's not the same anything, and see, does it exist on the other side of changing its ecosystem?
I had a friend one time, has his own business, offered me a job once. And was like, this was a while ago, and it was not a job that I was interested in taking, but I was like, well, just out of curiosity, why? What's it pay? Let me see. And I hear typing. It'll be between this and that. And I was like, what is that based off of? Well, he had to Google, what does this position typically make? Or like a ZipRecruiter thing. And he says, well, it's about this. And I said, why aren't you basing it off of what I'd be doing, what I'd be bringing in, your cost to have me? Like, don't you literally just Googled what other people with that title are making and you're just going to give that? Like, how do you feel about people that will say, hey, I went and I looked at the same title in our area and it's saying most people under that title are making this? Is that crap?
It's tough because I got two opinions on it, depending on what perspective you are.
Okay.
So if I had you manufacturing tires, then I have a spreadsheet that says how many tires you can manufacture and how much I can sell those tires for. So then I can pretty much say what value you can add, and I know what I can pay you per hour. So if I make $100 on your time, then I can not go beyond the $100. So if you're able to put one of those tires together one a day, then I know that I can't pay you more than the tires. And if my industry says the margins are supposed to be 50% in the tire manufacturing industry, then I look at it and say, oh, I could pay someone $50 a day to build this tire. And it's mathematically based. If I go out there and say, well, what I can pay, I'm not going to get anybody to take this job. So then if I don't even know my numbers and I have to go out to, someplace that glass ceiling, whatever those
Something
things.
like that, yeah.
Those places that give you those ranges. It's like, here's what I can pay and here's what people are willing to work for. Right. And I can compare those two numbers and say, if they're equal, if they're like, $50 a day, and this says people in this industry make $50 a day, then I put those two things together and say, okay, I'm where I need to be. If I'm like, people are making $100 a day making this tire, and I only have X amount of profit in this, I'm doing something wrong, and I got to expand the profitability of my tire. Maybe I'm undercharging for my tire. Maybe I got to charge $200, so at a 50% margin, then I can pay this person who's out there. So it's good information to know what people are willing to work for. Now, I don't know how accurate, being that it's a very employee-heavy deal and how labor costs have been inflated by those mysterious sweet deal people.
Yeah.
That's might not be reality. If you took an area that had government workers, right, and you took the average of what they were making, that's not freaking real. But you take a manufacturing town and you take what they're making, that's probably accurate because there's not a manufacturing facility that is going to overpay what they're willing to make. But in government, you can be like, oh, how much value you add? $10? Here's 128,000, right?
Yeah, because I've Googled before, like at past jobs, like, okay, well, what's my title? What does whatever the title was in this particular area typically make? And it would be way off. Like I'd be like,
well, it's okay.
I'm not even close to that.
But as in that moment, like if you're willing to, or if you want to get more than you're giving, then you're chasing the salary. You don't have any idea how you can add that much money worth of value to that person's operation, right? That's the illusion that we live in right now. But if you're like, oh, that makes this, what the fuck could I even do all day to justify that much money? That is a proper way of thinking. And if you're like, oh, I can absolutely put in that much money or put it in that much value.
Yeah.
But we need to break that illusion, and AI is going to break it. Like I 100% guarantee that the labor and worker have overplayed their effing hand and made it so terrible to get a beat on. AI is the only thing that's going to fix this.
Yeah, because in the meantime, all they're going to do is say, greedy business owner stomping on the little worker, not wanting to be fair because they're greedy and awful, when really, in my personal experience, it's the worker trying to get over on the business owner.